Today we are sorting through siding at the International Builder Show 2025 at the Westlake Royal Building Products booth. And today I'm joined by Emily Mottram, architect and author, Ryan Smith. You might know him as the Roof Slayer on Instagram, right? And you're a framing contractor.
Yep.
And CJ Johnson, who is the what is your title?
Director of Product Management.
And I've been telling folks when asked to explain this in my elevator speech, what's going on is I get to talk to an architect, a framer, and a siding manufacturer all in the same place. And I think it's fair to say that you all would not find yourselves in too many situations where you would have a chance to have a conversation. Am I right?
No, this is unusual.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Bring us
Yeah,
together.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
You have an amazing number of products here, CJ. We're going to get to talking about specifics here, but can you briefly talk about your company and what the role of your exterior collections is for and how they can help a builder and designers?
Yeah, so Westlake Royal Building Products has a wide range of brands that we've put together through acquisitions and investment. And these products are all designed to look beautiful and perform well, both in terms of installation and ongoing maintenance. So, we're always trying to look for innovative solutions that can help our customers create the home of their dreams and perform for the long haul. So that's the high level of what we do. I personally focus on the siding and trim category, but we also have roofing and stone components in our Westlake Royal Building Products family.
Emily is as an architect. Did CJ touch on all the right things that are important to folks with regard to siding, in your opinion?
Yeah, he talked about probably the most important one, which is longevity, right? Of the siding itself. That's just something that comes up for us all the time. How much maintenance is there going to be on this? How often am I going to have to repaint it? What's it made out of? Question. And then, as an architect, how many different options can I come up with, because they all want different siding styles, so they can do modern or they can do historical. So yeah, definitely covered those.
And
I think there's one other thing, though. The homeowners all want their home to look beautiful, right? That's the fundamental. Before even maintenance or the warranty or the high performance, right? These people come in and they're looking for a beautiful home. And so I think that's really the number one thing when people, especially are residing a home. How can I make my house look beautiful?
It's true. And we were talking about it ahead of the show. You look at it every day. You might as well like it. Am I right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Ryan, as a framer, as a carpenter, I think you would say that what's behind the siding is as important as the siding that goes on it. How can folks get what's behind the siding wrong, or what do you see that affects the quality, both in aesthetics and performance of a siding job?
Yeah, that's gonna. So depending on the product that you're using for your exterior finish, they will hide or they won't hide evils with inconsistencies with framing and substrate. In other words, how your walls are lining up with your floors and so on. So if you have your studs crowned poorly and your sheeting job is subpar, you're going to see that in your siding, depending on what type. I think vinyl, that's very popular where I live and work. That kind of hides more of that than some of these newer products.
Is it because it's flexible and has those recesses behind it that tends to obscure
it's
anomalies?
Right?
Yeah.
You don't nail vinyl tight. It floats, it expands and contracts. A lot of these new products don't. So yeah, once you're kind of locked in and you're installing it, you're really showing the bones of the actual frame.
Hard nailing any siding product to the wall exposes the underlying wall quality.
Sure.
Whereas vinyl or other products can float, and you can just allow it to a dip in the wall. You can just float over that.
When
hard nailing it.
I'm guessing you all are surveying your carpenters, installers, your builders who are buying the products. Is that one of the qualities they say they're looking for in a siding product?
I think it really is with the fundamental technology behind it. So I don't think it's that direct request, but certainly a number of sidings can float, and the others have to be hard nailed to the wall, and that creates this difference in characteristics.
We were talking about how the siding could be affected by framing. Are there other things that people can do to either ensure the success or the premature failure of a siding? Or have you heard about things that big builders run into with regularity, perhaps?
I think it's important to recognize that cladding is not water resistant. You know, it prevents much water getting to the wall assembly, but you need to make sure that you've got proper flashing, proper underlayment, because the siding is going to eliminate most of the water, but not all the water. So you really have to be careful about what's underneath the wall or underneath the siding.
And I'm guessing that you all have seen, like I have, driving around, some pretty sketchy water management details. How do you educate the folks who are installing siding to do a good job?
Yeah, that's hard
Yeah.
because we will have installation instructions. We've got installation videos on the website. We've got QR codes on some of our boxes that direct people there with some of the special installation practices. We do other things, but you know, you have to get it to the masses, and it's sometimes difficult to make sure every individual person knows it.
Yeah. What do you say about that?
Yeah, it's all about education and awareness. You know, again, speaking from my own experience and where I live, a lot of the framing crews aren't installing the house wrap and taking care of the flashing and stuff. Years ago, we would side all of our own houses. The market kind of got busy enough where we could stay framing, so we don't do it as often as we used to, but we still do. But yeah, the waterproofing, the house wrap, taping the house wrap, having the flashings installed before you get going. You know, a lot of guys show up, they want to just, let's get busy. There's so many steps before you start, you know, taking the siding out of the box, unbanding it. And it's one last time to check your wall framing, your substrate, you know, to see if there is irregularities. You could crack a stud in the house here and there to bring a crown stud out with one all flat. So it's just having a keen eye, I think, and focusing on quality, which we should all be doing.
Amen.
Yeah.
One of the other things I'd love to add is that, you know, I think it prevents some of the new products from being installed, because if you're not used to installing it, you get a little bit nervous the first time. And so with some of our products, we've created a first nail program where our install team will go out the first time you're installing a job and review the little details that it takes to make sure that is going to be successful. And we found that a great way to get people over that barrier, because they're not necessarily hard, but the first time you do it, it's a little scary.
How does one, arrange for this kind of training, CJ? How does a, builder have one of these crews come out to train their carpenters?
So you would work through our local reps who may be aware of the project, and they will arrange with our install team to get out there and support it. And it's worked fantastic, because most sidings aren't super hard to install, but it's those little details that you need to know to make it successful and make the contractor comfortable to continue to do this.
Contractors, I think Ryan would agree with me, are pretty risk averse, right? Because the stakes are high.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
What have you seen nasty behind siding? You've gotten behind a remodeling project and found some nasty surprises, I bet, behind cladding. Am I right?
Oh yeah, we had this great project. It was a beautiful old house. They took the siding off and the whole thing was rotten. Everything was just rotten. Turned out the flat roof that somebody added at some point was pitched backwards and it was all running into the wall. And, there was a whole bunch of things. But I appreciated what you said, about quality and thinking about that. For us in the remodeling world, we're constantly trying to tell people, don't just replace your siding. Like when you take the siding off, this is your opportunity. As a building science nerd, this is your opportunity to make improvements that are also going to both improve the longevity of the siding. So in the Northeast, we do a lot of siding over strapping because we want to make sure that our walls can dry out. But also this is your opportunity to take a look at what was happening behind what
You had
possibly continue to be a problem if you just slap some new siding on it. I mean, we've all heard they put new roofing on because they thought the roof was leaking. Turns out that wasn't the problem, but we've got new roofing. Well, now this new roofing isn't any good. And I think, unfortunately, product manufacturers get the short stick on that because they're like, oh, your product failed. Well, the building scientists in us would know that sometimes a product fails. It happens, right? But most of the time there's something else going on there. And so we find in all of our remodeling projects, you start taking things apart and you're like, oh, what's going on here?
Yeah, buildings are a system, right? We individually sell products, but it is a full system that needs to come together to work well. And
Yeah.
I think that's sometimes forgotten.
Sometimes.
So affordability has been in my social media feed for I would say years now. Have any of you all seen what we would describe as affordable sidings done well that make buildings look good, that make them the kind of place that you would want to come home to as a first-time home buyer? And I know we're not going to solve affordability here, but any simple suggestions that we can offer to folks?
Well, I think vinyl siding is the least cost to buy. It's the lowest cost to install, and the ongoing maintenance is pretty low. So it is a very affordable siding choice. And I think you just have to look at a project and what is their key goal and what's their budget, right? Because there's not one siding that works well in every application. You've got to find where the characteristics of the siding, including the costs, work well with what the objective of the project is. And so vinyl siding, I think, as time has gone on, we've gone beyond the days where it was white clay beige with J channels around the window. So if you use some of the new colors that have been introduced into the industry, use better trim packs, multiple materials on your wall, you can make your home look really good.
No, I agree 100% vinyl. I think the more importantly is the siding that's chosen by if you're working through a builder and you're the homeowner, I think they bring value as a builder by saving them money. And they're just not educated in the differences. So let's say they have they'll put $100,000 into their kitchen and they don't know what kind of siding is going on inside. And the builder isn't stepping up and educating and saying, we can do it with vinyl for this. We could move into a different product for this. And it's not going to be as big of a difference as something like a kitchen, branded countertops. But that information, I feel, just isn't being shared. When they go into the builder's office, there's two options: it's vinyl or stone. They don't talk about, and I know a lot of these products are kind of newer.
It's just simple for them, right? I think you'd agree. It's like you got a checklist. It's this or this, right? I'm sure that drives a lot of those decisions.
It does.
Yeah.
And it's like a fad. It's like clothing. It gets popular. We're starting to see more of this stuff in our neck of the woods, but I know it's doing much better in other areas. So like West Coast, I know they're using a ton of this. So I am seeing it, but vinyl is still, the most popular.
I wish everyone was like a doctor, where you're not just immediately selling, you are listening to what the problems you have and what the objectives are, and then creating a solution for that particular individual and home.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd also like to add, Patrick, you talked about affordability, but I think what we should also talk about longevity, because, you mentioned $100,000 kitchen. We try to have people, I know I'm the architect and I'm going to say, we try to have them not spend $100,000 in their kitchen before they spend the money on the thing that's going to last a long time, right? The average, and I don't know, Patrick, if you guys have done any research on this, but the average is like 10 years on a kitchen. So you put $100,000
at the long end.
Yeah, you put $100,000 in a kitchen that's going to be there for 10 years, or you put a little bit of extra money in your siding that's hopefully still going to be on your building in 30 years. If you
Protecting the building, right?
Protecting the building, if you did all the building science, it looks good, right? So we talked about people wanting to love their house. Like, you love this siding choice when you roll up, it's going to be there for a long time. And, walking around the Westlake booth here, hearing about how long I, asked one of your techs, how long till I have to paint this again? And he's like, you don't have to paint it again. Well, okay, now we're on to something, right? It's painting, and I don't want to paint it every year. And so having those conversations in the beginning, which I come from a privileged position as an architect where we talk to our clients about all of those things. A lot of times when you're on a remodeling project and all they're thinking about is replacing the siding, they don't always have those whole conversations. But I think when you want to talk about affordability, we also have to look at first costs and long-term costs. And I think that that's really important for people to kind of pay attention to, as it might cost you a little bit more now, but if you don't have to do anything with it for 30 years, that's what most people want.
Maintenance. Yeah, well, that's huge.
We've got a product, True Exterior, and it's a polyash product. It absorbs virtually no water. It has very minimal expansion contraction. It's being used on historic register homes where they're tearing off the wood, but asking for the exact replication of that. And they want it to last forever. And so they're looking at materials other than wood, which, doesn't have the very long-term stability, and looking at other products like our True Exterior. And so, it is finding these things. And as you say, they cost a little more money, but over the long haul, they have really good attributes.
Can you talk a little bit about polyash? That's a product that I've seen come into the marketplace in my career. Can you talk us what the advantages are and where how it's made, what it's made of?
Yeah, so
Because that's part of the story, right?
yep, shockingly, it's polymer and fly ash put together. So there's 70% fly ash in the product. So a lot of that would be waste materials being recycled into siding. That combination does the two things I just mentioned. It doesn't absorb any water and it expands and contracts very little. So you can do butt seams instead of having a pocketed assembly. You can also do mitered corners and things like that, which again, architects really enjoy and would like to do that. And many consider it a better look. So that product is fantastic. We sell it primed, but it can be painted in any color because you don't have to worry about the heat absorption. So, a product like polyash, which is a premium product offering, has some fantastic attributes, but it's of course not for every project.
One thing I've noticed about it is you can machine it with normal woodworking tools, and it looks fantastic. I would argue it finishes better than wood because it's so uniform, right?
Yeah, it's got the workability of wood without the long-term maintenance issues. So
It's pretty cool.
Or grain, wood grain.
Yeah, which is a problem for machining in addition to movement, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah.
I also noticed, and maybe you can explain, it looks like you have surrounds for window and door openings made of precision matched pieces. And it looks like they come in a frame and in how's that work?
Well, our trim and molding businesses create all kinds of different shapes, and many of them are replicating the historical wood shapes, right? That people have come and used, and architects understand quite well. But we're doing them in cellular PVC by and large, and cellular PVC again doesn't absorb water. Will expand and contract, so you have to manage that. But it can replicate the looks that architects have historically done, but in a material that's going to last a lot longer. And then, in our booth, we try to show how you take these individual bits and pieces, parts and pieces, and put them together into a look that people care about. So if you're looking for a craftsman home, here's the individual pieces that you may put together to create that. If you want a modern home, you're using a different set of parts and pieces. So we are trying to get away from just listing all the parts and pieces and hoping that they know how to put them together and helping people create the look for the type of home they're delivering.
What kind of mix match of materials drives you crazy when you see them riding around like CJ was just kind of alluding to?
Oh, I don't know. I get asked a lot. They're like, "Oh, what do you think of that?" And I was like, "I try not to comment on other people's things." And
What drives me bananas is to see like stone veneer above wood framed elements. Just like, oh my gosh, you guys did not study building at all.
or the one side of the house has one material and all the other side. Like we will mix and match, but in a way that feels architecturally significant.
Like
When you have just like the one, we can only afford to do this on one face. Is always really interesting to me. Like, what happened here?
do you have to have harsh conversations with clients sometimes and say, no, you really can't do that? Or do you figure out another way to say it?
Yeah.
Oh no, the client's never wrong. So you make what you want to show to them feel like it was their idea in the first place. And so we do a lot of 3D rendering because what we find is that clients can't really see the
Their
2D
problems.
surface, especially if you're doing 2D just in line weight and you're trying to show siding. That looks terrible. I'm sorry. It just looks awful. And so we do a lot of 3D rendering. We show them, combinations of things. So if they want something that is a little bit more interesting, or they want a product that's more expensive, and we need to pair that with something that fits in the budget. Like this is how we're going to do that. So it doesn't look like, the 3 foot course of stone on the bottom of the, And so we'll go through a whole series and spin them around their house until they hopefully pick the one that we liked the best. I'm not going to say that we haven't done, renderings of every possible siding choice because we do sometimes have clients that need to see every option before they land on one. But generally, a really good rendering goes a long way. I did a modern house in a neighborhood that had an architectural review board that didn't like modern houses. And we did a beautiful rendering, and they said, "Oh, this is the most gorgeous thing. Of
Oh,
course
that's
you
funny.
can build that." So then
That's
all the neighbors were really upset because we built a modern house and they all wanted to, but they couldn't get it approved.
Yeah.
So rendering goes a long way.
Oh, I agree. We're all visual
It's
people,
true.
right?
It's very true.
Yeah.
People
Not all
still
architects offer that, at least the ones we were using.
people still remark on Fine Homebuilding's drawings, and many folks, that's what they subscribe to the magazine for, is because it is a way they understand to see stuff in very explicit peeled away drawings, and I
Yeah,
get it.
Your
Me too.
apartment is
Yeah.
amazing.
It's true.
Really.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you ever been asked to like side something you thought was really ugly, or you
Oh,
had?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Built a lot of ugly houses. Yeah. Yep. Like she said, customers.
Whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Customers always
Their
right.
money's
As long-
green.
That looks
As long as
amazing.
we're happy in the end, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
That is what matters. Honestly, at the end of the day, if they're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, that's not our job.
But
Well-
these helpful suggestions, I think, can help them take their initial ideas and make it better. And
Yeah.
especially if you can render it. But even if you're just suggesting some ideas, because multiple materials on the wall just generally is going to look better in some cases, depending on your home style, than just lap siding all over the place.
It helps to break up long stretches of wall too, where
Yeah.
you really don't want a window. We always say there's an ugly side. That's where we put all of our mechanical equipment and stuff, but it's usually like a long stretch of siding. And, we were talking about walls not really being
Yeah.
straight. You can now get siding in 16-foot long lengths. And then if your wall has, it can look, so you're like, oh, we're just going to cut this here and we're going to do some different.
We call those money walls.
Yep.
You can throw a lot of material up in a hurry.
So I don't need to remind you guys, wildfire, hurricanes, hail, all these things are in the news seemingly with great regularity. CJ, we were talking about vinyl siding, great for many things. I'm guessing that's not the best choice in hurricane prone areas. Am I right?
Well, the ironic thing is vinyl siding is kind of attached to the wall with 2 points, right? So you're nailing the top flange, but then you're connecting the bottom lock. And so there's 2 points of attachment to the wall, and it has surprisingly good wind resistance.
Really?
Whereas, some products where you're just nailing the top flange, the wind can get under and pull it off, and you don't get as high a wind resistance unless you're doing face nailing. So it is this counterintuitive thing that vinyl siding, which is quite thin, can have very high wind resistance.
Interesting.
And then, of course, we've got premium products like our Select product that's a board-like cellular PVC product. Wind resistance over 200 miles an hour. And so it's perfect for any coastal application.
Do you guys have to test every siding product as an example for wind? Yeah.
We do.
And is that part of some ASTM standard, or how does that all work?
So it depends on the class of siding, but vinyl siding uses ASTM D3679, and that's part of the requirement. So you have to do that and be sure that you're doing it. And we put on our boxes the design pressure that the product can withstand, so that an architect who's designing the building and knows the environment that it's facing can make sure they're picking the right siding.
So that scale, and forgive me for can you tell us the units and like what its range is, and maybe a typical, Gulf Coast scenario?
Yeah, people are thinking in miles
Wind
per hour.
zones,
of
yeah.
winds, but
Right, yeah.
we're testing that in terms of design pressure that it takes to pull the siding off the wall. But we have in Miami-Dade or something, it's going to be 180-mile-an-hour wind resistance, right? And so a product like Select well exceeds it, so it can be more in Miami-Dade, but also all across the country.
Do you have projects that have coastal requirements where you are near Portland? Yes.
Sure, it rains upside down if you're out in the coast of Maine.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of things that you have to take into account, especially because we're building super thick walls for our climate zone. And then we want to make sure we've got rain screens on all of that so our super thick walls can dry. And then we want to attach a piece of siding to it. Now we're like, okay, well, now the siding isn't attached every so often. So what kind of siding do we have? How does it have to perform? If it's out on a coastal area, does it need to do something different than what we would do, inland in Maine? So yeah, we have to pay attention to that. And I don't think we're in the 180-mile-an-hour wind range for sure. I think we're only in like 100, 120 maybe. Right side of the hill, right side of the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have to frame stuff different because of high winds where you are from the
No,
lakes?
no, we build for weight for snow.
Uh-huh. For snow.
Yeah.
What is your
In
snow load?
installation. I think we're in the 50 to 60 pounds per square foot. So,
That's crazy. You
Welcome,
get used to
welcome to
it.
Buffalo.
you know,
Hey, we have 90. What do you have in Buffalo? Buffalo gets 5 feet of snow at a time.
our roofs are a lot steeper too. So,
Sure.
you know, they don't really hold a lot of snow.
Ideally.
Ideally. Right.
No, it's a system. So you're designing for
Yeah.
the location that you're at.
That's-
And
yeah.
that's really important.
It's a form of building science for framers.
What about wildfire? We've been talking about wind. Another concern. That California has had devastating fires. There's going to be, new building going forward for years. What should we be telling people to put on those structures?
Again, I think it's really important to say it's a system. So we would have a product like our cedar renditions over here, which is non-combustible. We still would recommend for a 1 hour rated fire assembly that you're putting a gypsum sheathing behind it. And so it's more than just the product. It's the system in the wall assembly. And then, of course, in California, you have to make sure the roofing assembly is done properly and that you don't have ashes getting into the soffits, and you have windows that are going to survive, because any ember that gets in your home is devastating, and then clear your thing and then still have luck. So it's a really challenging but systems question that you have to think of it as a full system.
I'm guessing manufacturers don't get around a round table, although I would love to imagine that very concept. But do you have to talk about stuff like how are we going to deal with wildfire?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in hurricane, we'll go down with our trade organization and visit and try and learn what went wrong and how we can recommend improvements to the code. Where I think most of it goes is in the code. So the code bodies are meeting, and you've got people not just from one industry, but multiple industries with different perspectives on the world, trying to push codes that can make the products, the houses perform better overall.
What if there's not consensus? I mean, how does that shake out? And I'm guessing there's not always consensus because there never is about
Right.
anything.
Right.
No, you're left with either staying with the current code or having a mechanism where there's a debate about what gets in. So it is it's an interesting thing, and it's time consuming. We have a code and compliance official at Westlake Royal Building Products who does a fantastic job understanding what's going on in these. And we rely on them for these detailed discussions about how do we make products that are compliant with the code in the location that they're trying to build.
Does it sometimes mean different instructions for different parts of the country or different details? I bet
Yeah,
it does.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, the wind resistance, right? The different fastening assembly that you're going to use is going to impact the wind resistance.
What did I forget?
I don't know. We didn't talk much about maintenance.
Yeah, low maintenance.
Yeah, go ahead. Because for everyone, no matter where you live, how do we make these things last longer?
Yeah, we survey customers. What are you looking for in siding? And they like beauty, but one of the other top things is they don't want to be spending their weekends maintaining their home, right? They
Right.
want this to last for a long time. And
With
so
no maintenance, I think
there's nothing that's no maintenance. You have to at
No
least
such thing
wash
as
it.
zero maintenance.
But minimize the maintenance. And so we've got a product like Select, which is cellular PVC, doesn't absorb much water, and water is the starting point of maintenance issues, right? If it gets behind your siding, you could have problems. Even within the siding material, it can degrade it. Wood is a classic example; it'll rot. So if you've got a fundamental material that doesn't absorb much water, one step down this path. And then with Select, we coat it with a Kynar paint, which is the best paint in the industry. Very low fade characteristics, right? It's known far and wide for its low fade characteristics. So we've had our Select line out there for about a dozen years, and there's been zero fade comments on this, right? Which is spectacular. And we've known from very aggressive fade testing that it's very, very little fade. But it all cascades back down to people want low maintenance, and we've got to figure out ways to deliver that.
Is that a theme in your conversations with clients?
Oh yeah, everybody wants zero maintenance, which I repeat every time. There's no such thing as zero maintenance. There's a level of maintenance that you might have to do. There's a level of money that you might have to spend to get to that. There is sometimes there are natural materials and you just have to be okay with the fact that they are going to fade or they're going to weather differently. And are you okay with that? And so we have a lot of conversation about long-term maintenance. I'm a huge proponent of both putting your QR codes on our drawings so that everybody's got an iPhone, they can watch someone install whatever it is so that they can help to improve the maintenance if it's installed correctly.
Back up again. So you actually put that QR link on the project and hope that the installer will look at it before the project.
We
Yeah.
tried to do that. And I've been kind of a big proponent of trying to do this for a long time. And it's not only just like siding products, it's like window installations. This is the first time you put a European window in. Okay, well, that's a little bit different. Because everybody has an iPhone on a job or
Yeah.
I'm an Apple person, so I have an iPhone, but you know what I mean? Everybody's got a smartphone on a job site to be able to watch that. And I think it's really important for them to be able to watch someone physically installing it. I think that makes a bigger difference than but at the same time, you heard Ben say yesterday on the stage when we were doing BS and Beer Live that a lot of these QR codes are printed on all of your products and they have it on every single package you have on your job site. And that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's going to use it or look at it. But maintenance is a huge thing for our clients, especially because so they're getting around to me. Potentially they're building their final home, right? They're moving to Maine. They want a long-term home. They don't want to freeze, but they also don't want to spend every weekend maintaining it. Or I don't know if you guys have tried to paint anything recently, but it's like $40,000 to paint the outside of the house. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So like, I don't want to spend $40,000 because the color faded. And I appreciate that you talked about color because one thing that Patrick said before that we might talk about is the white modern farmhouse leaving the scene.
That's my
And
next
what are we
question.
coming on to next? And I would say we're all kind of happy for the white modern farmhouse to be going away. But the thing is, white lasts a long time.
Yes,
I
right.
mean, not having to paint white, and now what's super popular is that Sushugiban, the dark siding, right? Some of that stuff fades and some of it fades to some interesting colors, right?
And
So
not uniformly, right?
and so homeowners have a really hard time kind of accepting that about it and not wanting to continuously maintain it. Like if I have to stain this or clear coat it every year, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, that's my father.
I think when you
Cedar siding every 5 years.
Yep.
Clear coat.
Center Hall, Colonial. Every 5 years, he has the painters come over. They redo the whole house. But that's my dad. He likes the wood. There's two types of people there with the maintenance.
They sure are.
He's maintaining it by writing a check. He's not really maintaining, So
How do you have fierce conversations with your clients about like there is no such thing as maintenance free and we'll do our best for you, but there's going to be some expectation you're going to have to do some work on this house, right?
yeah, it's all about educating, like Emily was saying, and everyone has a smartphone. I mean, if you're wondering something about a specific product or an installation technique or what somebody else, how the industry is kind of vibing and how everyone's installing things, you can have an answer in minutes. So then, like, you share that with your customers, your clientele, how you're kind of using this wonderful world.
Crowdsourcing.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, and I like that because you get many different techniques and ideas, and you can kind of settle on what you think will work best, and maybe that's location based.
So many things are, right? How you do details and products, all architectural styles, all of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Maybe one of the best things about America is the diversity of housing stock we have here. I would say it's a pleasure to travel around and see different house styles.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see.
one of the looks that you see when you walk around the show, and even in high-end magazines like yours, you will see all kinds of stained wood looks.
Yeah.
Looks spectacular, but you are maintaining it the next season. And so a lot of people here at the show, including us, are trying to create the look of stained wood without the ongoing maintenance because
What is that
so
product
important.
That looks like a porch ceiling, right? That is what is that? That is fantastic.
Yeah. Funny you should ask. That's our Grove Collection look. And so again, we're using cellular PVC, doesn't absorb any water as a substrate, wrapping it with a PVDF film that's photorealistic for the look of stained wood. and it's spectacular for porch ceilings and soffits. We're adding column surrounds with that material right now. So, that is an absolute trend that I can see continuing for
What
years.
Ryan and I were remarking about ahead of the show is a carpenter. You love to put stuff up and have it done. It's the best thing. It's like you put it up there and then you look at it and you're just like, all right, next thing, let's go. Right?
Yep, absolutely.
I love that you, as product manufacturers, are also listening to us, because there was, I would say, that whole first wave of like, we're going to make things that look like wood. And we're all like, it kind of looks like plastic. Oh, and then like looking over here,
That's impressive,
like
right?
if you didn't go up to that and touch it, you wouldn't know. So, I mean, thank you from the design end for making things that actually look like what we want them to look like, because we have that whole conversation, and our clients come in and they're like, but it kind of looks plasticky, and it sort of looks, it's like finally we're getting to the point where we have great materials that will look fantastic, and by the way, they're going to last longer and not have to be maintained. And
So I'm going to ask you, because you're maybe the best person to ask, is that a photographic process that's making that look like that?
Yeah. How did you get the color so perfect?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's done with gravure printing on the film, and then we will laminate it. But it starts with realistic wood tones or wood grains and trying to emulate that. So all of the things we do, whether it's like our Versetta stone, we will get real stones, create molds with those stones, and then use cement to replicate that. So it's all starting trying with natural materials. And I chuckled when you talked about this, because people sometimes talk about the physical embossment as the wood grain. It's like,
That means that the surface texture.
yeah, the surface texture.
Okay.
And, people paint wood and you don't see a texture generally. So it's funny.
It is. That's a good point.
It's frankly impressive. And do people put it inside too?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can
Yeah.
be used inside as well, but porch ceiling is perfect application, right? Where
Oh my
again,
gosh.
the maintenance inside, you don't have nearly the maintenance concerns, but it can certainly work.
Painting a porch ceiling is terrible.
Painting anything is terrible.
You touched on it a little bit ago, Emily. So what is the next thing? I think we've gone post farmhouse. Is it fair to say? Have you noticed any trends? I'm guessing you guys survey folks of all stripes about all of this stuff, right?
We do, but I would also remind people that it is a long tail, right? So I think you're going to see some modern farmhouse looks carrying
I
on
was going
For
to say,
years. Yeah.
far and at the architectural bleeding edge, we're done.
Yeah,
We're done with the farmhouse, but I think we probably still have several more years of the farmhouse.
Well, it's appealing because it's a cool architectural style, and who would deny it?
I
It's
feel
just-
like we're
yeah.
just getting into it.
You're just getting into it.
The
Well,
vertical siding, board and batten.
Yeah, our board and batten profile is by far the highest growth profile, and white is by far the highest selling colors, so I think there's a long tail.
yeah, it's a long tail. I also think that it started from something that was a historical representation. I mean, they used to have white farmhouses and they used to paint their windows black on their porches. Like, it came from
A
historical
vernacular.
reference that people were really attracted to. And I think part of the reason why on the bleeding edge of architecture we're done with it is because a lot more people are doing it, right? So you're seeing it more now, and then that's like the transition to
Then
what
it's
it is.
less cool.
You talk
Right.
about board and batten, and I would say that was even like the step after the white modern farmhouse. Like, white modern farmhouse for me was 10 years ago. So like it's really interesting to hear you guys are like that's where it's coming. And then we've kind of gone through the board and batten transition too. So you guys are gonna, if you haven't been doing as much of that or you're seeing it, it's coming. It's coming
it is.
hard. And so and we're moving on. I would say we've been doing a lot more modern stuff recently. So like going.
Is it all gray as it has been, Emily, or is that moving
No,
on?
thankfully gray is gray is really moving.
What do you think about gray, CJ?
Grays are still very high
Yeah, I
sellers,
bet you.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like gray.
You do.
I do.
Yeah. I think it looks great in all light, which is not something you can say about every color.
I like it as like a gable accent. If you do shakes up in the gable, lap siding below that, different color corners. To me, that's Oh,
Sounds a little Victorian.
that's how, to me, that just is what catches my eye.
Neat.
You know, yeah.
What could there be a modern Victorian style that takes off? Modern.
There you go,
looks with
Emily. That is your
very-
new.
There could be anything. Honestly, I'm from Maine, and so we have a lot of that sort of French influence from Quebec that comes in.
Oh, yeah.
We have some really colorful things. I'm not sure color is the thing that's coming next. I'm not sure, but I think gray is moving out. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think the wood tones that you're putting out is that's where it's coming. The replication of those Western red cedars that you
Of,
can't get.
Like clear finishes or stain finishes. You
Yeah.
mean? Yeah. Interesting.
But hopefully with more durable material that doesn't have to be stained every year or 5 years.
Right.
So
I still think there's an interest in black. We continuously get requests more and more black. And
Yeah.
So
How do you
I would
deal
agree
with
with that.
that? I mean, I'm guessing it depends on the material, but I'm guessing cellular PVC is a no-go with black. Is that a fair statement?
I think pigments are getting better so that they've got some infrared reflectivity, right?
Yeah.
You still need the low absorbance in the visual, but you're looking for pigments. And so we're always trying to find that balance. And there are choices out there that you can paint things, cellular PVC products black.
Really?
Some of the vinyl safe blacks we've tested look pretty good.
And I would say from a design perspective, use that in conjunction with something else so you can put the blacks in places that maybe are either really highlighted or maybe not on the west side of the building.
Just
where gonna
because
super
it's,
fade
uh,
fast.
It's going to get super hot.
It's going to get hot. And that's one of the things that, for warranty reasons too, I'm sure that you guys went through a whole process of like, okay, this thing just heated up.
Right.
And what does that mean for us in the siding world to translate that to the building or whatever in the Northeast? Like when it gets warm in the wintertime, if you're doing that in Florida, that's probably not a great choice.
And
Do you notice trends or colors take place in certain parts of the country and not others? Are there some parts of the country that are very traditional in their architectural styles and have stuck with that forever?
I definitely think that there's some regionality to colors, but a lot of our siding is not being sold in the Western U.S., right,
Yeah.
where you've got a lot of stucco. So I think that already limits you. And so although there are differences, you see popular colors in all regions, whether it's Midwest, Northeast, or Southeast, that are common. There's a few differences where it's gone up, in our rankings 4 or 5 points, but I think popular colors seem to be popular in a number of places.
In all
right?
places or
Yeah,
in
yeah.
most places. Interesting. Have you all noticed that traveling around? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's a visual thing. Like,
Huh.
we're all kind of similar. I would say.
It's a bit of a challenge in the homogenization across the U.S. Whether you
That's what
see
I was wondering if you still
McDonald's
saw-
everywhere, they all start looking the same no matter where you go. And I'm sure as an architect you don't like that, but
I don't mind it spreading out, just not. Yeah, it can get kind of hard, especially because there are some design styles that really lend themselves to certain parts of the country. So they look great there. And then you see one, I'll say, out in the wild, and you're like, ooh, all
It's a
right.
disconnect, right?
Yeah, feels like we were just recently in Costa Rica and they built this really modern house and it was painted super dark colors. I mean, it's like 90 degrees. We're driving around and I'm thinking,
wow.
like, this feels like it doesn't belong here. And, it's tall, it's narrow, it's really dark and has a ton of windows. Like,
On that subject, when a client is pitching you something that just doesn't seem to fit in, they might not care. But how do you deal with that? How do you steer them to something that's more locally appropriate?
I think as an architect, I like a lot of design styles. So I'm not really like swayed by their design style. I'm fine with it kind of going in where it is. But a lot of times they'll come to us and they want something that is not well suited for our climate zone, right? Like, we were talking about having
Stucco.
steeper roofs. Like we've got a 90 pound per square foot snow load and you want a 112 roof pitch.
Right.
Like, okay, I'm not saying you can't have it, but like, let's go talk about structural steel now because
Yeah.
it's not coming off the roof. So I have to hold it up. And so we have a lot of those conversations with clients like, yes, you pulled out this beautiful thing from the Pacific Northwest. And I'm not saying we can't do it here, but here are all the things that are going to go into it. It's the same for me, whether that's structurally, whether that's aesthetically, or whether that's like building science. Somebody comes to us and they say, oh, I like this, whatever. And I'm like, it cannot defy the rules of physics. Like it just can't. So how do we get to what you want? And it goes back to a lot of education, right? Like, can you do it? Sure. You can have huge spans. Like look at Walmart or this convention center, right? You can span a huge space. How much money do you have? Right. And so a lot of times that comes into just talking through like, what was your goal here? What is it that you really wanted out of this? Is it the aesthetics? Is it the just open space? Is it how you want to feel in the space? And then we kind of dial down to how would that work for here? And also, what's regionally available too, right? So I'm sure you guys go through the same thing. It's like, where do you have your factories? How do you deliver it to people? How can they get it? How much money? Like, yeah, I can get it, but it's going to cost me however much money to get it from wherever is the closest.
So I'm curious, question for you, because you're an architect sitting next to me. How much do you consider if someone comes in and they want you to design their house, do you look at the location?
Oh yeah.
So, okay, so say it's in a nicer subdivision or whatever. Do you consider the designs of the houses near it, or do you leave that entirely up to your client, or maybe nudge them and say, that might not look so good in here, but hey, it's your house. I've always wondered, because some of the places, the houses I built in some of the subdivisions, you can tell which architect drew which house just by looking at it. And
Yeah.
I love it.
I like diversity, so I don't necessarily think that they need to blend in. In fact, even sometimes when you have, so this was common in Rochester. So when my husband and I lived in Rochester, we were looking at houses and we drove through, and I said, I can't live in this neighborhood. He's like, why? And I was like, every house looks the same. How, as an architect, am I going to explain to somebody how to get to our house? It's like, my house is the tan one with the garage door on the left, right? Like that. And so I think that there is sometimes of value to historical significance, right? We've talked about, being in certain towns or whatever, but there are ways to do that it's not matchy, doesn't look exactly the same. But I also love, have you ever seen that like really skinny house, right? I forget where it is. It's like all these skyscrapers is this tiny, it's like 8 feet wide and it's in between. And like, as an architect, I love that. That's like the gem. That's the thing that you're looking for. So if I have a house that really stands out and looks different, as long as the people who live there are comfortable with that aspect of it, because like if your neighbors aren't going to be nice to you because it's an issue that's like we also love like permaculture. We have a lot of our clients don't want to, and we won't go down this rabbit hole about grass and mowing and that whole thing. But like, if you're going to build in a neighborhood, you're going to have a wild landscape in the neighborhood. You got to make sure your neighbors aren't going to be sending you HOA violations because you didn't mow your grass.
You better do your homework first, right? Yeah.
So we do talk to our clients, and a lot of them will come to us before they've bought land too. So we appreciate that, because sometimes they want to build in a development, and that development may not be the right fit for them because of certain HOA rules. Like, we're going to put solar on, a lot of our projects. Some neighborhoods don't let you put solar on them. But, we're going to, we actively try to build only as much square footage as they need. And some developments are going to have a minimum square footage, which I think is a fairly poor way of trying to maintain value in a neighborhood, but that's what they got to work with, and so, to answer your question, I think it depends on the client and it depends on the neighborhood, but I love things that stand out and are unique. And
I think a well-designed home, even if it's in a style that's not in the rest of the neighborhood, will be appreciated, right? You don't want to be the one doing the lime green home in something.
It's got to be
crazy,
it's got to be
but
pretty. It's got to be attractive.
it's got to look nice.
Yeah.
Even if it's not your style.
Right.
CJ, what would you love if you could wave your magic wand? What would you love for all people who are using your siding products to know?
Again, I think it's finding the right application for the right product. And we have features that I tell, and when I'm at the show, I can explain them in person, but we would love for everyone to understand this. And something like Select, the fact that we have such a low maintenance offering is something that people talk about low maintenance throughout the show, but I would put our product up against anything. And so, as product manufacturers, we're always trying to make sure people are educated about what the features and benefits are and how they compare. So if I could make everyone educated, I think the industry would progress because they'd pick the right product for the right application.
That's a wonderful aspiration. I I think. Right. Yeah.
I would say that's 100% true. When you're talking to your clients, find out what it is. Like, what's the thing? What's the driving factor? And then use the right thing that goes with that.
What do you think?
I agree. Yeah, focusing on what matters most to them and kind of build it around it. If maybe the inside of the house is more important than the outside, But having a product there to show them, and that's obviously huge. So, and we're in that era now with social media and everything. It's super easy to hit your website and see everything that we can actually look at and touch here today. Which, if you built a house 20 years ago, you had to go to the lumber yard, look at the samples. Remember looking at molding?
Oh my gosh.
They'd stand there for hours trying to match up a piece of base molding on a remodel.
It was just the worst thing to show like a siding on a 2-foot sample card, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
2 foot, people are making decisions on little
A
fan
little
decks
tiny
that
fan.
are 2 inches by 9 inches. But
Like, is your fan deck the same color as your actual siding, right? Because
Yeah.
you printed this one on paper and this is a different material and it's going to look like this on it. Yeah, we're constantly
looking at your computer screen,
Oh, yeah.
hoping that it
It's
matches the
definitely
real
different color.
product, right? So, yeah.
it has been a pleasure talking with you all. Thank you so much for
Oh,
doing
yeah.
this.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for
It's
joining
really
us and
fun.
bringing us together.
Great.
Yeah.
I can't wait to do this again. Yeah. At the same time next year, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Sounds
Thanks.
good. In Orlando.
Yeah. It was fun.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
It was a pleasure.